Today, we're jumping into one of the most violent and traumatic events of the 20th century, the 1947 Partition of India. It's a history so painful that India only recently, in 2021, created an official day to remember its horrors. So, what exactly happened, and why is it so crucial that we remember it now? This is a story of lines drawn on maps and of lives completely torn apart. Let's get into it. Yeah, we have to start right here with this question, because it just cuts through all the politics, all the history books, and gets right to the human heart of this story. So, the person who asked that, his name was Saladin Khalid. He wasn't a politician, not a historian. He was just a kid, a young boy who saw something absolutely unspeakable. His memory, that's our way into understanding the reality of what happened to millions of people. To really get a handle on the partition, first you have to grapple with the sheer scale of the personal trauma it left behind. And that survivor, that was Salahuddin Khalid himself. He used that exact word, slaughterhouse, to describe his own home after his mother was murdered right in front of him. And his story, unbelievably, was just one of millions. This was the partition. Right, so how does this even happen? How did neighbors turn into killers and homes turn into slaughterhouses? Well, to understand that, we've got to look at the huge political shifts that basically lit the fuse. On the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward, right? After almost 200 years, the British Empire was leaving India. In its place, two brand new countries would be born. But the birth of these nations, man, it was just drenched in blood. And that's because it was all based on this fundamental disagreement about what the nation even meant. Okay, so this slide really boils down a massive, complex conflict into two opposing ideas. On one side, you had the Indian National Congress. Their idea was something called composite nationalism, the belief that India was one big, unified nation made up of all these different religions and cultures living together. But then on the other side, the All India Muslim League pushed the two-nation theory, this belief that Hindus and Muslims were fundamentally two separate nations that just couldn't coexist in one country. In the end, it was the two-nation theory that won the political fight. And this is where things just get unbelievable. The guy they picked to draw the border between these two new countries, a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe, had never even been to India before. And they gave him just 5 weeks to carve up the subcontinent. He split ancient provinces like Punjab and Bengal right down the middle, cutting through villages, farms, even houses. You can draw a straight line from that incredibly careless act to some of the biggest conflicts in the world today. Okay, so let's talk about the consequences of that hastily drawn line, because this decision led to one of the greatest tragedies in human history. The numbers, they're just staggering, and they tell a truly horrifying story. Over 15 million people. Just let that number sink in. To put it in perspective, that's more than the entire population of many countries today, all forced to leave their homes, often with only what they could carry. It is still the largest mass migration ever recorded. And the death toll, it's just catastrophic. The estimates go from a few 100,000 all the way up to 2 million people murdered in just a few months. And what's truly chilling is that we'll never know the exact number. The chaos was just too absolute. And then there's this. In the middle of all the violence and displacement, an estimated 75,000 women were abducted and subjected to horrific sexual violence. Their bodies basically became a battleground for all that hatred. So you have to understand, this wasn't some organized war between armies. No way. The historian William Dalrymple just nails the absolute horror of it with this quote. This was a complete and total breakdown of society. Neighbors turning on neighbors, friends becoming mortal enemies overnight. How does that happen? And if you look here, it becomes so clear that the violence went both ways. This was not a one-sided thing. No community was spared. Muslims, like Salahuddin Khalid's family in Delhi, were massacred. Hindus faced terrible atrocities like the Mirpur Massacre. And Sikhs, like Sardar Joginder Singh Kohli and his village, were slaughtered by mobs. In this awful cycle of revenge, everyone was a victim and everyone was a perpetrator. The worst of the violence in 1947 did eventually die down, but the wounds, they have never, ever fully healed. The partition left these deep generational scars on the entire subcontinent. And you can see the ripple effects right here, lasting to this very day. That constant hostility between India and Pakistan, born right here in 1947.
The trauma has been passed down through generations, what one person called a collective migration of sorrow. It created ongoing crises for minorities on both sides of the new border, and it lit the fuse on the conflict over Kashmir, which is still a major flashpoint.
So that brings us to today. After more than 70 years of this sort of unofficial private grief, why is there a formal public push to remember this horror now? Well, in 2021, the Indian government made it official. They established August 14th, which is the day right before India's Independence Day, and the same day as Pakistan's, as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. It's a formal, national moment to reflect on the immense suffering that came with freedom. Now, the stated goals for this day, they're really about looking forward. The idea is to remember the past, yeah, but not just to dwell on it. It's about learning from it, to fight against the kind of social division we see today, and to strengthen harmony. It's an attempt to turn a legacy of pain into a lesson for the future. But the past is never that simple, is it? We're going to end with this haunting question from the writer Saadat Hasan Manto, who lived through and wrote about the partition's madness. It's a question about identity, about belonging, about the human cost of just drawing lines on a map. And it's a question that honestly has never had an easy answer, and maybe it never will.